This happened a few months ago. I'm 32 now, and I've been working as a nursing assistant for about 5 years. I like the night shifts. They give me time to help my mom during the day. I thought I knew St. Christopher's Hospital well. But 3 nights changed that. I think about it often. It started just like any other quiet night. The fluorescent lights above me flickered. I pushed my cart down the empty corridors. It was calm, maybe too calm. I thought I was used to the hospital's night vibe. But then, on my 3rd shift, I heard it. A faint sound came from the pediatric ward, a child crying. My heart raced. I hesitated, listening closely. It could have been leftover from a patient, I told myself. I shook it off and moved along. The next night felt off again. I glanced down that long corridor, and I saw a shadow move just out of the corner of my eye. I spun around, and it was gone. My hands felt cold. I rubbed them together for warmth. Outside the pediatric ward, I noticed toys on the floor. They weren't just scattered. They were lined up like soldiers. A chill ran down my spine. Something didn't sit right with me, but I was tired. I brushed it aside. Then came the 3rd night. I was jumpier than usual. While pushing my cart to the nurse's station, I saw a note pinned to the board. Missing items in the pediatric ward. Please check. My stomach sank. I remembered the toys but couldn't recall any recent admissions. I felt trapped between my duties and the odd feelings swirling around me. As I walked away, I heard the crying again. It was louder this time, almost frantic. I didn't want to check, but my legs moved without asking me. I headed towards the pediatric ward, light spilling from the hallway into the room. The air felt colder as I stepped inside. The room was empty, but the sound continued, like it was coming from beneath the floor. I froze. My heart raced. I don't know how long I stood there. Then, a faint whisper crept into my ears. Help me. I questioned if my mind was playing tricks. I wanted to get out, but my body wouldn't move. I heard a rustle close by. I turned around. Nothing was there. Suddenly, I bumped into a toy box against the wall. Toys tumbled out everywhere. Then, it was quiet. I hurried out of the room, not daring to look back. When I finally finished my shift that night, I was in a daze, unsure of what just happened. I told some co-workers, but they dismissed it as stress talking. But those moments stayed with me. They crawled under my skin like an itch I couldn't scratch. I knew then that St. Christopher's held secrets I would never understand. I still think about that little voice. It still haunts me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Even after a couple of weeks, it hung over me like a dark cloud. My shifts felt different, more intense. No one else seemed to notice. They talked about regular hospital concerns, but I couldn't join in. All I could think about was the crying and the whispers. One night, as I settled in for another shift, I made a decision. I needed to investigate the pediatric ward. I picked up a flashlight. Quietly, I headed down the familiar corridor, my heart thudding louder with each step. When I reached the pediatric ward, the door was slightly ajar. I paused, holding my breath, then pushed it open. The room was dim, illuminated only by the light from the hallway spilling in. Toys littered the floor, and the orderly lines I had seen before were somehow even more pronounced now. My unease flared to a simmer. I fought the urge to leave and turned on my flashlight. The beam caught something at the far end of the room, a small object glinting in the darkness. I edged closer, my breath shaky. As I approached, I realized it was a locket. It was delicate, engraved with a child's name, Emily. My hands trembled as I picked it up. A chill settled deep in my bones. Who was Emily? I felt compelled to find out more. I couldn't just ignore it. But before I could let the thought fully form, the air grew colder. The familiar sound of a child crying echoed in my ears again, louder this time, wrapping around me like a cold whip. Panic surged through me. I turned, ready to bolt, but a longing to help the child drew me back. "Emily?" I whispered, half hoping for a response, more terrified than ever. Nothing. Just silence. But when I shone the flashlight back toward the toys, my heart dropped. They had moved. They were no longer in neat rows, but seemed to be forming a trail, leading further into the ward. Against my better judgment, I followed it. Each step felt heavier, my legs shaking beneath me. The trail of toys led to a small room in the corner, which I had never noticed before. I reached for the doorknob, but it was locked. I pressed my ear against the door. I thought I heard faint giggling, like children playing. I stepped back, my heart racing. That's when I saw a shadow moving behind the frosted glass of the door. I froze, unable to take my eyes off it. The giggling grew louder, clearer. It sounded innocent, but there was an underlying sadness that chilled me. Just then, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, gasping, but there was no one. Only the empty hall behind me. My breath quickened. Whatever I had stumbled onto was more than I imagined. I took a step toward the door again, ready to knock, but the laughter stopped. A silence blanketed the room. Then, I heard a soft, trembling voice call out, "Help me." That was it. I turned and bolted, adrenaline coursing through me. I rushed through the corridors, needing to get away. But as I reached the nurse's station, my stomach twisted. I had to tell someone, but who would believe me? I glanced back at the pediatric ward. The door was now closed. And even from that distance, it felt like something was watching me. I had to find out what was happening, but I didn't know how. Somewhere in the depths of St. Christopher's, I felt certain that answers were waiting for me. But what I didn't know was that the shadows were closing in around me. The next shift came too quickly. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of Emily and the locked door. I didn't want to go back, but something deep down pulled me to the pediatric ward again. I walked in, determined to get to the bottom of this. The lights flickered as I entered, almost like the building itself was warning me. I glanced around, but the ward was empty. The toys still lay scattered on the floor, and the faint smell of antiseptic hung in the air. I stepped deeper inside, hoping for some sign, anything that could explain what I had felt. Suddenly, a soft clinking drew my attention. I turned to see a small music box resting near a hospital bed. It was painted with images of animals, and as I approached, it began to turn on its own, playing a haunting lullaby. I stumbled back, chills racing down my spine. Why was it playing? I hadn't touched it. Before I could process what was happening, I heard it again, the laughter. It broke the lullaby's melody, echoing from behind the locked door. My heart pounded in my chest, and I took a step back. The sound was playful, but I could still hear that underlying sadness. "Emily?" I called out, my voice trembling. The laughter faded, replaced by silence. I felt a sense of urgency rising in me. I had to find out what was going on. Against my better judgment, I searched the room for something, a hint, a clue, anything that might help me. That's when I spotted a stack of old medical charts piled in a dusty corner. I rifled through them, the names of children flickering past my eyes like fireflies in the dark. And then I found it. A name. Emily Harris. She had been a patient here years ago. I quickly scanned the details: diagnosed with leukemia, admitted for treatment, then listed as lost to follow-up. I felt sick. What had happened to her? Before I could linger too long, I heard a sound, soft and urgent. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it was coming from the locked door. "Help me," the voice echoed again, clearer this time. panic surged anew. I had to do something. I left the charts and rushed toward the door, pressing my palm against its surface. It felt oddly warm, pulsating beneath my hand. I glanced back down the corridor to the nurse's station. I knew I should call someone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something I had to solve on my own. Suddenly, I noticed a glimmer of light under the door. It flickered and danced, almost inviting. My curiosity got the better of me. I stepped back, ready to kick down the door if necessary. But before I could, the light turned to darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, and my heart raced. Something was definitely wrong. I knew I was in over my head, but I couldn't turn back now. Then everything went dark. The lights in the ward flickered again and then went out completely. I stood there, my pulse roaring in my ears, enveloped in darkness. I half expected to hear laughter, but all I could hear was my own shaky breaths. "Emily?" I whispered into the void, desperate for an answer. I stood there in the thick darkness, straining my ears for any sound. The silence felt heavy, like a pressing weight against my chest. "Think," I told myself. I needed to be calm, but my heart raced faster. I took a cautious step back toward the door, hoping for some glimmer of reassurance. Then, something unexpected happened. A pair of small hands suddenly grabbed my ankle, sending me tumbling backward. I hit the floor hard, gasping for breath as I scrambled back. "What the hell?" I shouted, feeling my way across the cool, tiled floor. "Help me," the voice pleaded again, but it sounded faint now, muffled as if coming from far away. My hands brushed against something soft. I froze, imagining it might be a child, but no, it was only a stuffed animal. A teddy bear, worn and frayed, lay there in the shadows. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the moment, but I was too anxious. Just then, a sliver of light returned, illuminating the area briefly before it faded again. I wasn't alone. I could feel a presence nearby, something just beyond my line of sight. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt glued to the floor. "Emily?" I tried again, my voice wavering. I could feel my throat tightening, panic threatening to flood over me. The laughter echoed again, more playful this time, but still tinged with a sorrow I couldn't ignore. It was almost like Emily was teasing me, drawing me closer to her plight, but keeping the door of truth locked tight. Then, I heard a soft knock from behind the door. I jumped, my instinct screaming at me to flee. But I was still tethered by an invisible string to the source of the sound. What if I was wrong? What if that was Emily needing help? I couldn't abandon her. Bracing myself, I lunged toward the door. "I'm coming in," I yelled, my palms sweaty against the cool, hard surface. I twisted the knob, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I pushed against it with all my weight. It felt heavy, locked tight, but I leaned into it harder. Old memories flashed in my mind. Kids would sometimes play hide and seek, banging on doors, laughing until they tore themselves apart with joy. But this felt different. It was a child's voice, sure, but cloaked in an urgency that twisted my gut. And then it opened. I stumbled into the room beyond, breathless and wide-eyed. The light flickered above me, revealing a space that felt frozen in time. It was a small playroom, dust motes drifting lazily in the air. Toys lined the shelves, but they were covered in a layer of neglect. In the corner, a single hospital bed stood empty, sheets piled haphazardly. As I looked around, I realized something was off. The shadows seemed to dance, alive and restless. I stepped further inside, and that's when I saw a faded drawing taped to the wall. It depicted a young girl with big, bright eyes and curly hair, surrounded by colorful balloons. Above her, written in crooked letters, were the words, "I am Emily, and I'm waiting." My heart stopped. I felt a chill run through my body. Something dark was lurking here, and I had stirred it. Just as I turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind me. The laughter returned, but this time it felt different, darker. The air grew thick, and I realized I was definitely not alone anymore. The room felt suffocating now. The door closed with a finality that sent a jolt of fear through me. I turned, my breath quickening, and focused on the shadows that seemed to stretch and fold like they had a life of their own. The laughter faded but left behind a lingering echo that made any hope of calm hard to grasp. "Emily!" I called out, more desperate than before. There was silence, and in that quiet, I could hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears. In the dim light, I noticed something shift in the corner of the room. I squinted, trying to make sense of it, and that's when I saw her. A small figure curled up near the hospital bed, her back to me. My heart raced. Could this really be her? "Emily?" I whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. The figure remained still, and I felt another chill run through me. As I moved closer, my foot struck a toy car, sending it skidding across the floor with a sharp clatter. The girl startled, turning to face me. Her eyes were wide and dark, pools of fear that mirrored my own. But something about her expression felt off. There was a flicker of recognition, yet it was masked by a strange sadness. "Help me," she said with a hollow voice that chilled me to the bone. "What do you need?" I managed to say, trying to suppress the fear gripping my throat. "Not here," she replied, her small hands shaking. "You have to help them before it's too late." "Help who?" I asked, confusion battling my fear. "Where's your mother?" Her expression shifted, a shadow crossed her face. "She's gone, but you have to find her." Voice trailed off, as if she was fighting against something unseen. Suddenly, the light overhead flickered violently, casting eerie shadows across the room. A crack echoed through the stillness. My heart raced, and a feeling of dread washed over me. "We need to get out of here," I urged, but the door wouldn't budge, still sealed with an unseen force. The girl's eyes darted around, and panic flared in mine. "Emily, I can't leave you here," I cried out. But she just shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't go back." Before I could respond, the shadows around us surged forward. I felt a cold grip on my arm, tugging me down. I stumbled, eyes wide with terror, and I could sense the room pressing in on me. "Help me!" the girl screamed as I fought against the encroaching darkness. Just then, a flash of light consumed the room, and everything went white for a moment. When the light faded, I found myself back outside the playroom, gasping for air, the heavy door ajar. I blinked, confusion washing over me. Had it all been a nightmare? But as I stood there, I caught sight of something on the floor, a small, frayed teddy bear, similar to the one I had found in the shadows. My stomach lurched, and terror consumed me as I realized this was far from over. I had entered a web, and I was not the only one caught in it. Gripped by the urgency of her words, I knew I had to go back no matter the risk. The clock was ticking, and Emily needed me. The air outside the playroom felt cool against my skin, but it did nothing to clear the panic swirling inside me. I clutched the frayed teddy bear tighter and steadied my breath. I needed to think. Emily was still in there, she was real, and whatever was happening, I couldn't leave her behind. I peered back into the playroom through the ajar door. It felt ominous, the light inside almost flickering like a heartbeat. With a rush of determination, I pushed the door wide open. The shadows danced wickedly as I stepped inside, a cold sweat forming on my forehead. "Emily?" I called, my voice wavering. There was no response, just the echo of my own words haunting me. I glanced at the hospital bed, everything looked untouched, yet I could feel the weight of something unspoken pressing down on me. Suddenly, the teddy bear slipped from my grasp and tumbled across the floor. Without thinking, I dashed after it, my heart thudding erratically. As I bent down to pick it up, I noticed something glimmering beneath the bed. Curious, I leaned closer. It was a small silver locket, dull in the dim light. I picked it up and opened it cautiously. Inside was a picture of Emily and her mother, both beaming with an innocent joy that felt worlds away from what I had just experienced. My stomach sank. "Please, let this mean something," I whispered to myself. It had to be a clue, something that would lead me to her. But just then, a noise behind me sent a jolt of fear crashing through me. I turned, half expecting to see Emily standing there, but instead, the shadows on the wall seemed to pulse and writhe, forming shapes that looked unnaturally close. They loomed ominously, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. My breath caught in my throat. I stepped back, fear gnawing at my resolve. Then, something caught my eye. A flash of movement near the far corner of the room. "Emily!" I shouted, a mix of hope and dread flooding my voice. I thought I saw her, but the figure darted away before I could be sure. I ran towards where I'd seen her, but the shadows blocked my path. I could feel them wrapping around me. I fought against their pull, reaching toward the corner, desperate for a glimpse of the girl who had spoken to me. "Emily!" I cried out again, but all that met my ears were the delirious whispers of the darkness. In an instant, the shadows surged forward and enveloped me, their coldness seeping into my bones. Panic surged. I twisted and turned, but they clung tighter. My vision blurred, and I was sure I would be lost in this abyss. Then I had a thought, the locket. I held it up, letting the dim light reflect off its surface. "You don't have power over me," I yelled, my voice shaking but steady. Immediately, the whispers halted, the shadows shied away, allowing a path to clear. I raced forward, heart in my throat, and as I broke through the remaining darkness, there she was, standing against the wall, her dark eyes filled with a mix of fear and relief. "Emily!" I gasped, reaching for her. But just as I grasped her hand, the locket slipped from my fingers, and everything went dark once more. I jolted awake, breathless, the darkness enveloping me like a thick fog. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the dim light filtering back into the room. My heart raced, and a chill ran down my spine. Emily was gone. "Emily?" I called out, my voice trembling. Panic clawed at my chest. I scrambled to my feet, scanning the room for any sign of her. The shadows lingered, but they felt less oppressive than before. I noticed the locket lying at my feet. It gleamed dimly, a faint beacon in the darkness. I picked it up and noticed it was warm to the touch, almost alive in my hands. I opened it again, hoping to find some revelation, but the picture was still the same Emily and her mother, happy and carefree. Why did it feel so important? That's when I heard a faint giggle echoing from the far corner of the playroom. It was a sweet sound that sent shivers up my spine, and for a moment, I felt hopeful. "Emily!" I shouted again, my voice louder this time. I stepped cautiously toward the sound, but as I moved, the walls appeared to shift. The room felt different, as if reality itself was warping around me. Then I saw a flicker of movement behind an old wooden toy chest. My heart pounded. I took a deep breath and approached carefully, every sound echoing in the stillness. "Emily, is that you?" The laughter came again, this time more pronounced. It was as if she was dancing just out of sight. I reached the chest and pulled it open, but it was empty, save for a thin layer of dust and some forgotten scraps of paper. "Come on, Emily. We need to get out of here," I urged, desperation creeping into my tone. I felt a tug at my sleeve, a light touch that sent icy flames racing through my arm. I turned quickly, expecting to see her, but instead, the shadows rose, swirling ominously. A figure started to materialize. It was a man, his face obscured by darkness, and he watched me with piercing eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice low and gravelly. I took a step back, heart racing again. "Where's Emily?" I demanded, my voice trembling but fierce. "She's where you cannot follow," he replied, his smile cold and unsettling. The shadows twisted closer around him, as if they were part of him. I felt the panic rise again. "No. I'm not leaving without her." The man laughed softly, the sound grating against my nerves. "Doing nothing will get you nowhere. Choose wisely." Before I could respond, he vanished into the shadows, leaving me reeling. Then everything changed again. The light shifted, flickering in and out, and before I could gather my thoughts, I saw an object lying on the floor, shimmering faintly in the dim light. I hurried over, my heart racing with fear and anticipation. As I reached down to pick it up, I realized it was another locket. This one felt different, the chain was heavier, the metal colder. I opened it, and the sight inside took my breath away. It was a photo of Emily, but this time she was alone, tears streaming down her face, her eyes pleading for help. Suddenly, the haunting laughter returned, transformed into panicked screams. I felt the world spinning again, everything blurring into darkness. I closed my eyes, clutching both lockets tightly, hoping they held the answers I so desperately needed. But as the screams echoed around me, I knew that this was only the beginning. I opened my eyes, and the world twisted around me. I was back in the playroom, but it felt different now, more alive, as if the air pulsed with energy. The laughter faded, replaced by a deafening silence that hung heavy over everything. "Emily?" I called out again, but my voice felt small, lost in the vast emptiness. I clutched both lockets, my heart racing with every echo of my own words. Where was she? The shadows seemed to dance along the walls, flickering like candlelight. It was unsettling, and I felt an urge to run. But I had to find her. I couldn't just leave her here. That's when I noticed something glinting on the floor. I stepped closer, instinctively drawn to it. It was a small toy, a miniature horse with chipped paint and a cracked hoof. I remembered Emily had loved playing with it. My fingers traced its surface, and a wave of memories flooded back her laughter, her bright smile as she raced the horse across the floor. Where are you?" I whispered, squeezing the toy tightly. For a moment, I thought I heard a soft whimper, barely audible. My instincts kicked in, and I rushed toward the sound, following it through the shifting shadows. The laughter returned, but this time it felt distant, as if it were coming from outside the room. I pushed through the darkness, feeling my way along the walls. As I turned the corner, I nearly tripped over something on the floor. I slid to a stop and fell to my knees, heart thumping. It was another item, her favorite blanket, the one covered in bright stars. I picked it up, a scent of lavender filling the air. "Emily!" I shouted again, a growing sense of urgency rising within me. Just then, the shadows fluttered violently. I felt the air chill and every hair on my body stood on end. "You shouldn't have come here." The gravelly voice pierced through the darkness, sending a wave of ice through my veins. The man from before reappeared, his figure looming ominously in the doorway. "Let her go!" I shouted, my hands shaking, still clutching the locket and the blanket. He stepped forward, unfazed. The shadows twisted around him like snakes. "They will not be yours to keep. You cannot save her. Watch me!" I yelled, grasping the locket even tighter. But as I moved toward him, my feet felt rooted to the floor. Panic welled in my chest. "Choose wisely," he said again, his smile growing wider, more menacing. That's when I noticed a faint light spilling in from the back of the room. It pulsed rhythmically, beckoning me. I turned quickly, breaking free from the paralysis, and ran toward it. My heart pounded as the shadows licked at my heels. As I reached the source of the light, I found another door. It was old, wooden, and etched with strange symbols I'd never seen before. I paused, glancing back at the man, who now stood still and silent, watching me with an unsettling calmness. What lay beyond that door? Would it lead me to Emily? Or was it another trap? In that moment of uncertainty, I made a choice. I gripped the handle, twisted it, and pushed the door open, ready to face whatever awaited me on the other side. I stepped through the door, and my breath caught in my throat. The light enveloped me, a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the cold darkness I'd just left. I found myself in a long corridor lined with doorways on either side. The walls were painted a soft, comforting blue, and the faint sound of music floated through the air, something gentle and familiar. "Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice wavering. There was no answer, just the distant sound of the music. I took a tentative step forward, the floor creaked beneath me, but I kept moving. As I walked, a sense of calm washed over me. This place felt safe, almost like a dream. But there was still an urgency in my chest. I had to find Emily. I paused before a door to my right. It stood slightly ajar, the music louder from within. I pushed it open and peeked inside. The room was filled with soft toys of every kind, stuffed bears, dolls, and colorful blocks. And in the center sat a small table set up for tea, a tiny teapot and mismatched cups. It looked just like the imaginary tea parties Emily used to hold with her toys. A wave of nostalgia hit me, but I couldn't linger. I stepped back into the hallway and continued toward the end, where an even brighter light beckoned me. I reached another door, this one marked with a golden star. My heart raced as I turned the handle and pushed it open. The room shimmered with an ethereal light, and there she was, Emily, seated on a fluffy cloud, surrounded by glimmering stars. She looked just as I remembered, her hair pulled back in pigtails, her smile bright and infectious. "Emily!" I cried out, rushing to her. But just as I reached her, the scene shifted. The stars twisted away, the clouds evaporated, and I found myself standing in an empty room, the only sound the echo of my voice fading into silence. "Emily!" I shouted in confusion, my heart pounding. I turned back, desperate to find her. Then I saw it, the man from before appeared in the doorway, his smile twisted with amusement. "You thought it would be that easy?" he sneered. "She's not here. She's south, trapped in the place you just left." I felt my insides twist with despair. "What do you mean? Where is she?" He stepped closer, the shadows curling around him like mist. "You have a choice to make. Save her or let her go," he said, his voice silky and dangerous. "Just tell me how," I pleaded. He pointed to a small, flickering light in the corner of the room. "That is your only chance. But be warned, once you make your move, there will be no going back. Time is running out." Before I could process his words, the light dimmed, and my pulse quickened. I had to act quickly. I rushed toward the light, fear clawing at my insides. As I reached out my hand, I felt a rush of air, and then everything went dark. I gasped awake, struggling for breath as I blinked against the familiar dimness of the pediatric ward. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, giving the room an otherworldly feel. My heart raced. Somehow, I was back here, yet the shadows felt lighter, less oppressive. As my mind wrestled with confusion, I glimpsed the door to the locked playroom. It was ajar now. "Emily?" I whispered, the name a fragile prayer on my lips. Taking a cautious step, I pushed the door wider. The room looked the same, yet something had shifted in the air. There was no eerie laughter, no threatening presence. Only silence hung, thick and palpable. Inside, I turned to scan the room for any sign of her. "If you're here, I'll find you," I called softly, my voice echoing between the walls. With a deep breath, I stepped in, plunging headfirst into the chaos of echoes from my last ordeal, whispers of fear and desperate pleas. The light flickered again, and in the distance, I noticed something shining beneath the bed. I rushed over, dropping to my knees. It was the same locket, warm in my hands, and I could feel the tricks of time weaving around me. I opened it carefully, Emily's picture was still inside. Her mother was there too, both smiling brightly. Hope surged through me, mingling with an old, aching sadness. "Please let this be a sign," I murmured, clutching the locket as if it were a lifeline. Just then, a small giggle broke the silence. My heart leapt. Was it really her? "Emily, is that you?" And then I saw it, a faint silhouette darting across the room. "Emily!" I yelped, moving toward the figure, but shadows loomed, swirling around me and threatening to swallow me whole once more. "Help me!" Emily's voice floated through the air, crystal clear this time. I followed the voice, tearing through the heaviness pressing on my chest. I reached the farthest corner of the room, where the shadows felt weaker. As I brushed against the wall, the locket pulsed in my hand, and the air thickened like syrup. "Emily!" I cried one last time, desperation clawing at my throat. I pushed against the barrier of darkness, forcing my will against the unseen forces that had shackled her. The shadows recoiled slightly, just enough for me to see a flicker of her dress, her pigtails bouncing as she turned her head toward me. "Help me," she cried again, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and something else, hope. I lunged forward, stretching my arm out where I could almost feel her presence. "I want to leave you again." For a heartbeat, our hands almost connected, but just as quickly, the darkness spiraled back, pulling her from my grasp. "No!" I shouted, the locket slipping from my fingers. It hit the floor, spinning before landing unceremoniously at my feet. The world shifted violently, darkness threatening to drown me. But I wouldn't let it hijack my resolve. I snatched the locket up again, bracing myself against the swell of shadows. "I choose to fight. I choose to save her," I declared, my voice echoing in the swirling void. The locket glowed faintly under my resolute grip, and I focused all my energy on it. The shadows screeched, and the air crackled with energy, each pulse resonating with my determination. Suddenly, the room erupted in a flash of light, blinding me momentarily. When I blinked away, the stars dancing in my vision, I found myself standing not in the playroom but in a sunlit, open space filled with laughter, a playground. Emily stood before me, radiant and real, her expression one of pure joy. "You came back," she beamed, rushing into my arms. I held her tight, relief washing over me like a cleansing wave. But even as I embraced her, a shadow flitted at the edges of my vision, whispering darkly, a promise of some lingering menace. Now, as I brushed myself off, I looked back at the schoolyard with an odd mixture of gratitude and trepidation. I could never fully understand the darkness that tangled itself with my memories, nor the whispers that still echoed through my mind. But for now, Emily was safe, and I would hold on to that. With each step away from the playroom, I could feel the unseen eyes watching. The mystery of St. Christopher's remained a juxtaposition of light and shadow, laughter and whispers. I still think about it sometimes, an unresolved knot tightening in my chest. Did we truly escape, or was there still something lurking in the corners, waiting for the next chance to take hold? A question I never wanted to answer fully, for it was a truth better left undisturbed.